Imagine a facilities team trying to understand a water leak in a commercial building. The access system says a technician entered at 2:14. The alarm record says the condition began at 2:13. Building automation shows a valve change at 2:11, and the video appears to show the technician arriving after all of that. Which record do you trust?
That is exactly the kind of question that consumes time when the event is already difficult. People debate what happened, when the first signal appeared, and whether the response was early or late.
Wait, so the equipment may not be the first thing that failed?
Exactly. Sometimes the systems are not failing independently. They simply disagree about what time it is. And that is the real problem. If a building cannot establish a shared timeline, it cannot reliably explain itself.
That is a much bigger issue than a clock on a screen being a few minutes off. Welcome to Built, Wired, and Secured. I'm Alex Morgan, and today we're looking at what happens when security, automation, maintenance, and IT records stop lining up. James Rogers is with me, and he brings the facilities perspective to a problem most teams notice only when they are already investigating something.
Thanks, Alex. I like the phrase shared timeline because it keeps us focused on operations. This is not a product discussion, and it is not a configuration guide. It is a question of whether the people responsible for a building can assemble a trustworthy sequence of events.
A door opens. Someone sees an alert. A fan changes speed.
And now everyone is arguing about which event came first. A few seconds may not matter to a comfort trend. Several minutes can change the apparent order of an alarm, a response, and an equipment change. The right level of precision depends on the workflow, but the decision cannot be made if nobody knows whether the records share a usable time reference.
Right. The timestamp becomes the connective tissue.
From an operational standpoint, yes. Time connects a security response to building operations, a maintenance note to equipment behavior, and an alert to the decision someone made after seeing it. What breaks if this goes down? Not necessarily the equipment. What breaks first is confidence in the record.
So why does this happen so easily in modern buildings? We have systems installed by different teams, supported by different providers, and owned by different departments. One group is thinking about network time. Another is thinking about controller schedules. Someone else is focused on access events or video retention. Each team may be doing its own job correctly, while nobody is checking the whole story.
That separation is common. A building automation controller is treated as a mechanical asset, access is treated as security, and monitoring is treated as IT. Each boundary makes sense on its own.
The gap appears when somebody asks all three systems to explain one event together. A power interruption, a controller replacement, a network change, or years without a side-by-side review can leave the records drifting apart. The screen still looks normal. The equipment still runs. The problem stays invisible until someone needs to reconstruct the past.
And that is when the clean-looking dashboard becomes a little misleading.
Yes, a system can be operating equipment and recording events, but still be difficult to use during an investigation. Reliability starts with disciplined maintenance. That includes checking whether the information produced by an asset remains useful to the people who depend on it.
Let me challenge the ownership question. If we say this belongs to facilities, IT, security, engineering, and the project team, does that create shared responsibility, or does it create a problem where everyone assumes someone else checked?
I agree that everyone owning it can become no one's job, but I am not sure I buy the idea that it is primarily IT either. IT may provide an important part of the time environment, but operations owns the workflows that depend on trustworthy records.
Meaning the team that depends on the timeline has to help define what good enough looks like.
Exactly. Security, engineering, maintenance, and business continuity may need different levels of precision, but each needs a clear expectation. If a facilities team cannot correlate an equipment alarm with a work order, that is not only an IT problem, it is an operational failure of coordination.
Fair. It can help provide the foundation, But the building teams have to identify the decisions that depend on the foundation. That is a better model than simply asking, are all the clocks synchronized?
Right. Ask instead, which decisions depend on these timestamps agreeing closely enough? That question changes the conversation from a technical checkbox to a business and operations question.
Because the consequences are not theoretical. A conflicting timeline can send a technician toward the wrong component, make a routine service call take longer, or make a response look late when it was not.
That is fine until it fails in a way that affects tenants. Tenants feel this immediately when a comfort issue lingers, when an access question takes too long to answer, or when the building team cannot explain why an alarm response followed a particular path. The equipment may be back online, but confidence in the operation has taken a hit.
And people tend to trust the first timestamp they see. They build a story around it, then force every other record to fit that story.
That is the trap. Maintenance records become the memory of the building. If a note says one thing, an automated trend suggests another, and a contractor report uses a third reference, months later someone may plan a capital decision around a history that cannot be confidently sequenced.
Let's make that tangible. Suppose an air handling unit behaves erratically overnight. The controller shows a command at 1:07. The environmental trend shows the temperature moving at 1:02. A work order note says a technician arrived at 1:11. What should the team do first?
First, resist the urge to decide that the command caused the temperature change or that the technician caused anything. We establish the available time references and compare them with a known point in the building's operation. Then we separate automatically generated records from notes entered by people.
So the first finding might be, we do not yet know the order.
Exactly, and that is a useful finding. If the timeline becomes coherent after accounting for clock differences, we have narrowed the problem. If it does not, then we investigate the equipment and the workflow separately. A timestamp inconsistency does not prove that a system caused an event, and it does not prove that a person responded incorrectly. It tells us the evidence needs context.
That idea should be part of project acceptance, not something discovered during a stressful investigation. When a new system is handed over, teams ask whether it operates. They should also ask whether its event records can be understood alongside the system's operations already uses.
Yes, and the same question belongs in routine maintenance. After a replacement, a service visit, or a power interruption, who confirms that the records still tell a usable story? Preventative maintenance beats emergency repairs every time. A simple clock review may never appear on a dramatic dashboard, but it can prevent an argument during the next service call.
What would you ask an owner or facilities leader to do this week? Not build a massive inventory, just take a useful first step.
Choose one event that matters. An after-hours access alert, a mechanical fault, a temperature excursion, or a utility interruption. List the systems people would consult. Then ask who owns each record, what time reference it uses, when it was last reviewed, and what happens after a replacement or interruption. Those questions reveal gaps quickly.
And if the answers are unclear?
That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to assign accountability. Name who validates the timeline, who coordinates across teams, and who confirms the expectation during maintenance and handoff. Technology should support operations, not complicate them.
If we bring this back to the central idea, a shared clock is really shared operational context. Without it, the building may have plenty of data, but no dependable way to connect the data.
That is exactly it. Reliability starts with disciplined maintenance, but it also starts with a building that can tell a consistent story about itself. The best day in operations is the one nobody notices because the systems, the records, and the people line up when they need to.
So here are 3 questions to take back to your team. Which workflows depend on multiple systems telling the same story? Who is accountable for keeping those records useful? And when were the timestamps last checked during maintenance, a system change, or a project handoff?
Map one important event, assign one accountable owner, and verify the timeline the next time that workflow is reviewed. That is the starting point. Shared, trustworthy time is not a luxury for a smart building. It is part of operational resilience.
Pick one event in your building and ask a deceptively simple question. Would every system tell me the same story about what happened? If not, bring facilities, IT, security, engineering, and your project partners into that conversation. Subscribe to Built, Wired, and Secured, and share this episode with the teammate who investigates alarms, manages maintenance, or coordinates technology handoffs. That wraps up this episode of Built, Wired, and Secured. Today, we explored why a building needs trustworthy shared time to understand its operations, respond with confidence, and preserve a useful maintenance history. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. Until next time, make sure the systems you're responsible for are built to last, wired with intention, and secured for the real world.